Good morning, and thank you for tuning in. We are a little bit after the hour, 10:07, and we are bringing you right now what is brewing in the biosphere. This is a monthly show sponsored by the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust. We're so grateful to Marianne that does all of the organizing for this show and contemplates the questions so thoughtfully and shares people working with the CBT in the CBT so that they can share what they are doing with all of our listeners. So this show is always recorded. If you miss it or you think someone wants to hear it and is definitely not listening, please get in touch with Marianne because she does have the sound files to all these shows. She's archiving them. Speaking of archiving, we have a cool project that we're going to talk about today. It's the CBT Archive Project. We have Colin Robinson in the house. He is the program coordinator with the CBT. And Adrienne Mason, she's a writer, editor, and she is helping the CBT out with this project. So let's welcome our guests. Good morning, Colin.
Good morning, Kim.
We're having you again. It's 2 for 2.
Yeah, lucky me.
Are we going for a hat trick? You coming in December?
We'll see if my coworkers can foist it on me.
I think you should. I think you should be like a constant. You should be like the constant radio.
I kind of like it.
And then whoever you bring on is who you bring on.
Yeah.
We should bring your wife on at some point.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing to do with the CBT, but a fabulously talented, intelligent, awesome human. She should just come on our radio station.
Oh yeah.
Look at your eyebrows going.
You can't see my eyebrows wiggling when she talks, but they are.
Okay, planting those seeds. Okay, so we have an archive project that we're going to talk about today. It's tremendously exciting. I used to work for the Raincoast Education Society, and a lot of our course was about the history of Tofino. And I just find between working at the Raincoast, working at the bookstore, there's such an appetite, both locally and internationally, to know more about this place. And I want to hear about the archive project.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. So we call it the CBT archive, but like all things CBT, it's really the regions. It's really an amalgamation of stories and knowledge and work that's been done by all the different NGOs and community organizations, businesses, First Nations governments, municipal governments. And so it's kind of a repository for a lot of work that happened mostly between the 80s into the early 2000s around that big time of community tension and change, a time when Nuu-chah-nulth governments were negotiating treaty, a time when the forestry industry was trying to log like the last unlogged parts of Vancouver Island, and community members were starting to say, hey, maybe we need to have a look how we can do things differently. So it was a time when people were doing something that hadn't really been done in Canada, so-called Canada before. It's kind of one thing somebody actually... I'm just going to shout him out. Josh Welsh, awesome District of Tofino manager of planning services, told me, I think of this time as when the sort of colonial resource extraction machine was ground to a halt. And it was a novel thing that hadn't really happened in Canada before. And people looked to this area for inspiration. And one of the things that happened through that time was a bunch of nerdy academics were all trying to figure out what happens because it was politically and economically unheard of in Canada. And we have the paper trail of this epic tale of resistance. I first learned these stories actually as a paddle guide, the fabled Moses Martin, chief of Clayoquot at the time, invites the logging crews on to Wanachis-Hiltuis.
And what does he say?
You may leave the chainsaws on the boat.
Right.
It is the stuff of local legend, but it's so interesting for me as a young guy, not actually from here, came here in my 20s, to see the paper trail of what this actually looked like on the ground for the people. And it's humbling. It's easy to talk about it as a kayak guide on the water to European visitors, but to actually see the amount of challenge and tension and hard work that happened through all these documents is incredible.
When you say the paper trail, I have to ask, what do you mean by the paper trail? And did you have to do like a Freedom of Information request? What is this paper trail?
Yeah, I would say it's documentation of community minutes, posters of people organizing. I would say Nuu-chah-nulth publications around, we're working on treaty and, what does this mean for our communities? It's a real blend of all sorts of different types of community documents. There's some old pictures. There's oodles of environmental research that was going on at the time, like baseline
How did you
studies.
get it all? It's not all in one place. Like did you go to the library?
Yeah.
Like where did you even begin?
I think I'm going to toss that one over to Adrian.
The researcher.
Yes, Adrian knows a lot about this, the origins of these document libraries and how CBT came to have them. Because Adrian used to work at CBT.
Well, honestly, thank you for that introduction. I think you did it so well and so succinctly. So we'll turn the mic over to Adrian.
All right. So I did work at the CBT about 15 years ago for several years, and I was the research coordinator. And one of the things, I was also a writer still in the background, always been a freelance writer, very interested in local history. And we were starting to be asked if the CBT was starting to be asked if from other organizations, would we like these papers? Would we like these things? So I've been in Tofino since 1991 or 93, but we bought a home in 91. So sort of was very focused on what was happening here. And, since I was involved in the Clayoquot Biosphere Project, which is a precursor to the trust, it's not exactly the same, but it was a big impetus for making the region a biosphere reserve. They had a whole bunch of research papers, the Long Beach Model Forest, which has come and gone, the Central Region Board, which was a critically, before that, the scientific panel, or Clayoquot Sound Scientific Panel, which was kind of given the question of how do we log better, but it was how all the work that went into create those panels and the huge amount of documentation and reports is really valuable to the area. And the one piece that Colin alluded to was a project out of UVic, Kara Shaw, who spends a lot of time here and her parents live here, and Warren Magnuson created the Clayoquot Archive. So they essentially they had copies of all of the documentation that was going into deciding land use in this area and deciding what was going to happen on the ground. So that also sort of came to the CBT. So we suddenly had all these kind of mini library archives being given to us because we were the last organization standing, I guess, or we were the new iteration of a organization in the area. And or I shouldn't say we, but at the time it was we, but the CBT, and it's not going anywhere. So it was a perfect place to hold these documents. And then I started to try to figure out what to do with them. And that became sort of the kernel of, well, let's create an archive. So it meant going through all of them, getting rid of duplications, trying to do some sort of cataloging system and stuff. So that was kind of a lot of that early stuff is actually kind of boring documentation. Maybe it's not, there is really cool stuff as well, but, like Colin alluded to photos and posters and things like that. But a lot of it is that very precious, but kind of bureaucratic and regulatory in some ways documentation that does kind of need to be in one place, especially for an area such as this that has gone through such a fundamental change.
Okay, thank you. And did you use any of it to write your book?
No, not per se, but I know as a writer who uses historical information how important it is. Even though I know maybe 90% of the people would look at this and go, oh, I don't know, am I ever going to pick that up off the library shelf? But those kind of, that kind of reports and documentation, you just can't get back. And it's a trick to figure out what to keep and what to not keep. And that's a question that archives all over the world have. Thank goodness for digitization. And that does help. It knowing that it's there, I think, is going to be an excellent resource for people doing projects in the future, similar to what I've done. And definitely, I would use it now.
It's a lot more user friendly. I would take it.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure the state of the search tool at the moment.
Can you tell us about that, Colin?
Sure thing. Well, Adrian did a lot of work years ago, organizing, cataloging. But then through growth and change of the organization and spatial needs, it ended up getting put into a basement. For a time, there was no staff member really dedicated to taking good care of it. Then in January 2020, there was a huge rainstorm and it flooded the basement of the CBT building. Well, I guess it's the building CBT rents on Main Street. And these archives were nearly destroyed. Some parts of it were, some parts it was quite dramatic, running downstairs and trying to get them out of there.
Were you here at the time?
Yeah. I was part of it, part of the rescue
You're part
mission.
of the rescue?
Yeah. And
Surely this has to go in the digitization.
Oh my gosh. We forgot to document that part. I could turn it into a folk song.
Yeah, I imagine kind of like Irishy, Scottish music in the background or something. This is incredible. So how did you save everything?
Well, we ran it upstairs, and for the first couple, I guess maybe it was January 2021. It was during the pandemic.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I don't remember where it was.
To talk about that, or I don't know, maybe we weren't doing in-person talk shows, but this is a cool story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we just had all these banker boxes full of like half-wet documents, all in the upstairs part of the CBT office. And then, I think that was kind of, maybe that's when we said, you know what, we should think about what the heck to do with all this stuff. Because that's the thing about archives. It's easy to just toss them in a closet in a basement and forget about them. But I'm nerdy for this stuff. So I was kind of chomping at the bit to do it at some point. And we decided with the new building, the Biosphere Center, to design some good public facing archive space into it to make these types of things super accessible and not in a dark, dank basement. And also to apply for some money to digitize it. So I've been busy coordinating the digitization, trying to decide, like Adrian mentioned, how do you decide what to digitize? We made some criteria. I talked to some knowledgeable people, and we've digitized a lot of it. And we're looking forward to hosting that on the BC, UBC archive, it's called. And that's going to be super awesome, very robust. The server's never going to go down. And so it'll be nice and searchable and linkable, even text recognition.
Okay.
That's key.
So wait, you're not hosting it on your website. CBT won't host it. It's too much information.
Yeah, we could host it on our website, but I don't think we actually are like as good at doing that as people at UBC.
Okay.
So we'll have a link to it on our website and we'll control it, but the actual search function and hosting and all that stuff will be taken care of by UBC.
So if a university hosts it, does someone in academia have to audit the information to make sure it's all 100% true and factual?
No, I mean,
They're just taking your word for it.
Well, it's more, I mean, if you look at some of the minutes from some of the community meetings in 1998, like, is that true?
Right.
Or was that just somebody
or an article?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's more history.
It is what it is. It's and the researcher should be able to, they would have a filter of what, is this a primary document, like a letter that somebody wrote is considered a primary source, or is it a article, that references that letter? So, any researcher accessing the resource would know.
Okay.
They should know, at least as a historian or whatever kind of research they are, to how to interpret that document and decide how they're going to present it or use it.
And then do you send it to UBC as just this giant digital file? Is that the goal?
I have it on my computer right now. I wish it was live now so that people listening could immediately go and just see the stuff. But if you're really keen on it, you still have to come talk to me.
Okay.
And I'll hook you up with it. But one big caveat I do want to add in is the new channel's information data sovereignty. I've been learning a lot about, I guess what you would call data sovereignty and information governance. And it's neat because there's so much really powerful information. I was telling Adrian on the walk over here, a fellow named Roy Hyupis was an elder contributing really fascinating, really rich New Channel's knowledge to the Clayoquot Science Panel. And a lot of the documents he put together didn't actually make it into the published report. You can find the Sci Panel report on the internet still, but you can't find the, 30 plus documents that he wrote about, New Channel's understandings of this place. And we have all that.
That's so cool. So was that part of the initial research that you were talking about, that Shaw had at the beginning, and that's part of what she collected?
Yeah, that is. I think all the Sci Panel contents were given to both. I think actually contents are duplicated in multiple libraries. So it's not like this stuff was secret information. It was contributed to public processes in a robust way, but that was 30 years ago.
Right.
And so the people who are going to be hearing this information now, we need to really, do it in a good way. And it's not to say, I don't know what's all going to go up on the internet.
Right.
Because here's a modern conversation. It's very different if it's a physical library in a building compared to the World Wide Web, accessible to anybody.
Right.
So, there's things we can do like request for access or password protection. So these are conversations that are ongoing, hopefully linking up with the Clayoquot archive crew tomorrow or maybe even this afternoon.
That was my next question.
Luke, if you're listening.
How much, not how much, sorry, but what kind of permission do you need from Clayoquot to put it in the archive?
I mean, that's the question. I don't know.
That's a tomorrow question?
Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
We're just taking it slow.
Okay.
At the end of the day, there's no rush. And I think just doing it in a good way is the key.
Do you both have a feeling of either great responsibility or pressure when it comes to being involved in this project?
No, I think I'm really pleased that the CBT has run with it after it was one thing, it was a passion project for me, as a writer of history, knowing that these are really important documents, whereas a lot of people would just go, they're not worth saving. So it's really super encouraging to me that Colin in particular has taken it on, and the CBT as large has recognized it as a valuable project and is moving it forward. So, and that there's a space, a dedicated, safe, good space for it. It's archives aren't the sexy stuff of history. They're not the artifacts that you can hold and things, but they are still really precious documents. These letters, maps, articles, so many, even books now, so many really wonderful books that have been written about this area are out of print. So they're really hard to find. So one of the more recent things we've sort of chatted about was having a dedicated space for any book that's been written about the region, the Clayoquot Sound Biosphere region.
Absolutely.
In the archive, because again, I have almost all of them personally, and other people do, but we don't want them to go to we'd like them all to be in one place that are accessible. And the library is not going to hold on to things like that forever. If they're not in big circulation, they're going to move them along. So they're really precious items that, and there is actually quite a lot written about this area, and not just from the 80s and beyond, or from quite a way back. So we're really lucky that way that a lot of people have taken the time to put their stories down.
Yeah, I'm so heartened by this. Everything from working at Raincoast and not knowing the answer to something, and someone would say, "Oh, just call Adrian." You were the archival oracle. A lot of pressure goes off your shoulders now. Or seeing people post on the training post, does anyone have the book about Walter Guppy? But, it was all disorganized, and now it's becoming organized and synthesized. So I'm very impressed and just heartened by this whole project. I think we'll go to a musical break, and then come back, and I have some more questions for you. So this one, Colin, tell me about the song I'm going to play, and tell us just a little bit about Woodstove for anyone that didn't get tickets.
I got to go to the Woodstove Music Festival in cool Cumberland. Lots of cool wool sweaters.
You look like you'd fit in.
Yeah, just the right amount of ruggedness. No, I'm joking. But, actually, I'm not joking. It's such a scene. It's almost...
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Anyways, this fellow, Miles Zerwell, is an Albertan dobro player. The dobro is a special kind of slide guitar. And the song he's going to play is called the Elk River Blues. And it's actually written by an American fiddler. And it was in a river valley that was going to be flooded for a dam. And he lived in the bottom of this valley, and he wrote this song in the last minutes before he had to get out of there, before his whole homestead was flooded over and everybody. So it's a very lonely, wistful song about losing your home.
Okay, here we go. Lonely music. And we will come right back with some more information about the CBT Archive Project. almost missed that cue because the problem with having Colin in is that he's way too interesting. So we were chatting and I almost missed coming back on. So that was Elk River Blues. Thanks for introducing that to us. That was from Woodstow Festival where he got introduced to this dobro player.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're talking about the CBT Archive Project. You've tuned back in to What is Brewing in the Biosphere, a monthly show syndicated by the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust, because they want you to know what they're up to. And this project is very cool. It has very interesting origins, and it's becoming a digitized project. We want to talk a little bit about community involvement now and in the future. How can the community get involved with the CBT Archive Project?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been doing as I've been working through looking document by document to verify, what is actually here, I've been sending little snippets and little tidbits out to people trying to sort of, see, is this relevant to your work? And one of the things I love about my job is I actually do know quite a lot of things that many people and organizations are working on. So I'm pretty well positioned to share it out and try to find, not everything's going to stick, not everything's going to be relevant, but I'm really just trying to get this stuff out of the basement and back into the hands of people who are thinking about and working on relevant stuff. So at this point, I'm working on just outreach, basically. But we are definitely looking to see how this can work in the future, not just as a library that people come to or a website that people visit, but actually an active library. So there's a couple examples. There's lots more material out there in the community, in people's offices, at their houses. And I know there's some appetite from folks to kind of contribute their collections to this place. And when I say the place, I mean the archive. So we're if you have materials that you think might be great to digitize or great to actually have the physical materials stewarded by CBT, that's totally an option. You can connect to me. And then we're also investigating what it might look like to have like a contemporary materials stewarded. So I'll just give one example. There's this amazing younger, new out of university staff at the Ucluelet Aquarium named Ruby. She's so smart and so awesome. Shout out to Ruby. But she's doing a whole bunch of really neat interviews around the Ucluelet Harbor. So trying to understand community sentiment. And right away, she said, obviously Ucluelet Aquarium, we're going to take care of this. But we do know that organizations grow and change and shift. And that's, we need to hedge against that. So would CBT be down to also like store copies of these interviews in the archive? And I said, you know what? I think that's great. So the idea is it can almost be like a Google Drive for the region.
Yeah. If
you have stuff that you're thinking, because a contract ends or an organization change or you get kicked out of your space, we're exploring ways for CBT and the new building eventually to be a bit of a repository for this kind of stuff.
I think you don't even need an organization to fold to have a hub, because there's something nice about, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but what if a lot of the language projects also could be found there? Because I don't know how the average person is. I can only speak for myself. I like going to one place to find information. So I think that part of being a hub is really interesting. And I don't know if that's a goal to house all the information and be like the one-stop shop, but it's nice to be organized.
Yeah, I mean, I think it connects right back to the initial intentions of what the Biosphere Project's all about, is to help the communities and organizations think and act like a region. But if everybody's stuck in their own little worlds and their own little offices, and communities are disparate and staff are turning over, it's hard to be like a region. So the idea is this is a bit more of a sort of collective community memory.
I really like that. Way to go back to your mission. Well done. Adrienne, what about you? Some visioning for the future for this project. What's your hope or vision for 5-10 years?
Yeah. Well, I think having I like the one-stop shop idea. Of course, that's great. And I think your example of the aquarium is a perfect one. It's just like what happened. That's how we got the original material, really, is organizations, their time had come to an end or for whatever reason. And they're sitting on really valuable information or documentation. So it's, where does it go? And the biosphere is really I've been around since it began, before it began. And, I think it's really come into its own as this is the place where we can hold these things without judgment, or, it's just all part of the story of what this region is, and the really difficult parts and the really hopeful parts. And this is a place to go to find out information. So, I'd love to see a really great searchable database, so I could go in and, look up Tuff City Radio and see what comes up as far as, newspaper clippings or articles, or, obviously the radio show itself. But just for researchers, that's just an incredible dream. It's, and definitely the way technology is going, that's more and more, it's easier to access things and to have, not everything's going to be able to be digitized. That's a lot. And Colin has to decide what does get digitized and what doesn't. But there's just being able, and the being able to search on words again, that is
you are getting excited.
I am getting excited because
you've done
think
so much work.
I think about Walter Guppy's books, for instance. So Walter was a gentleman that lived here for a long time, and he self-published a bunch of books, but none of them had indexes. So I actually went so far as in one of my projects to make an index, because it was so frustrating to me. I know he wrote about some river or something, but I can't go read the whole book again. So being able to search on words in documents is so amazing for researchers looking for, particular bits of information. So that kind of stuff is just really great. And I'm really encouraged that we might have, we will have one place, and it shares the load. The museum definitely has a lot of these materials probably as well, but they're very focused on Tofino in particular and Clayoquot Sound, and the Biosphere is more of a regional organization. And also, again, this, I referred to these, all of the very hard negotiations, bureaucracy, laws, all these things that have changed on the land here are part of the story too. They're not that sexy, but they're really, really, really critical parts of the story that are important to have somewhere in one place.
Absolutely. And they're not sexy until you have a historical fiction writer like Kristen Hanna come and say, oh, this exists. Now I'm going to write my story. And I think of writers and filmmakers as just the people that are taking, a historical event and bringing it to us in a sexier way. And they can't do that without the hard work on the backs of all the researchers. And they certainly are not going to wade through flooded basements. So I applaud you, Colin, for rescuing and others for rescuing these archives.
Brookwood was really involved.
Yeah. She's always involved, isn't she?
She's holding the place together.
I was actually thinking of Brooke, and I was thinking of all the leaders of the CBT, Rebecca. And when you were talking, Adrian, about the organization and thinking what a well-respected organization it is, but what wonderful leadership it has. And that is probably what will allow it to be sustainable. We talked about other organizations maybe folding and looking to CBT as that place to have the physical archive and the digital archive. And I think there's a conversation around why that is. And I think it's because of the extraordinary people like you and Colin and Rebecca and Brooke.
And I would also zoom that right up to the board. We're just staff. We're just doing the job. But the strength of the organization is really the regional vision, to have representatives from different communities here by mandate. And, not always, you don't get 100% consistent participation from every community all the time, but it's a place that people can keep coming back to. So even when it's hard, or you need to take some time away or focus on community priorities in one place, it's the consistency, I would say. And I'd say that's aligned with the idea of being a repository too, that we can weather, the ebb and flow of capacity by having this fairly durable organization.
For listeners that thank you, that was well said. For listeners that might not know, we alluded to the region that Clayoquot Biosphere Trust represents. It's not just Tofino. Can you say what is encompassed in that region?
Sure. It's not Clayoquot Sound, which is one of our favorite. We literally just had a very juicy discussion at our strategic planning last week about why Clayoquot Biosphere is actually a bit of a misnomer, because it does actually encompass the Eufluithat, Toquat, Ucluit, And then Clayoquot, Howsit, Heshquit. And it's interesting, even the Housits would be like, it's not Clayoquot sound, it's a Howsit sound.
Right.
So I think this is all relevant to thinking about the area that it encompasses because, what's in a name. But it's pretty much the communities that rely on the same infrastructure, the same road. We got one hospital, a couple of high schools, and the communities that were really wrapped into, I think, mutual interdependence. And that's kind of how the CBT was born.
Adrian, you look like you might add to that.
I think it's interesting, just sort of thinking back to the history, that was a big discussion at the very early days of the CBT, which isn't a discussion for now, but like who gets to sit on the board, because the founding of the Biosphere Reserve, which we referred to it then as the reserve, came with $12 million. So there was that sort of really changed the discussion, led the discussion as to who gets to say what to do with this. And that's where I think that more regional approach is like, it's yes, the land itself within the Biosphere Reserve is in Clayoquot Sound, but I'm looking at but the region itself, affects the whole region. It's not just what happens here is not just one community. Are there? Sorry, Colin's going to correct me here.
No, you're spot on.
He's adding.
This is you know it better than I do, I would say. But yeah, one term I often use is the social watershed, as reflected by the board structure. And, so the designated site, that was designated 25 years ago is technically the Clayoquot Sound watershed, but functionally from a programming and granting perspective, the area is much broader. So yeah, we've even been exploring ideas of what it would look like to add formally the southern parts, because effectively for the last 25 years, the southern parts have been a part of the conversation because they have to be.
Mm-hmm. I really love this. I like the details and I love language. So I appreciate you both clarifying. And I sense a soundbite. Marianne, if you're out there listening, first of all, indebted to you always for your research and organization. But let's have a soundbite on the radio. Could we encapsulate everything you just said, clarifying really what makes the CBT in 30 seconds or less? I think you could do it, Colin.
Let me just queue up my chat GPT.
Don't do it. Adrian, cover your ears. I'm trying to resist Chat GPT. I know I know it can help streamline things, but I do believe it's kind of the death of your own intelligence and creativity. Once you become too reliant on it,
100%.
It's game over.
If you need to be encouraged, though, have a little chat with Chat GPT. It's very positive. Just actually have a conversation with it.
Like instead of with yourself in the mirror, you just
you talk to and it's very positive and it.
We are errant. We are going off course. Okay. I'm going to leave you with a song by The Waves. I'm going to leave you with The Lighthouse. That's personal request by Adrian Mason. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave you with that. But before I play the song, I want to know if you think we've covered everything that we could tell our listeners about the archive, the CBT archive. We have what it is, where it came from, the future hopes for it. What are we missing?
I guess I'll just paint a picture of what it might look like once it's a little more public facing.
Okay.
We definitely hope to have a very accessible online searchable database. So if you don't want to talk to anybody or leave your room, you can just keep working and type it in and find, have text searchable abilities in a digital archive. But then in the new building, we definitely are going to have a large, spacious work area where you can actually go put your hands on, these documents, unfold the map, really have a look at what's there while also using an online searchable function to sort of find what's there. And ultimately, I envision a lot more community interaction with it, even a project level. So if somebody's working on, Colton, PhD student working with Haum on the Haukman Kennedy Lake salmon planning, this guy can go in and just easily access the documents that are there. I've emailed him some, but the idea is it would really reduce the barrier to accessing this kind of really powerful community knowledge.
Adrian?
I I think we touched on the books really briefly, but this is just kind of a little bit of a new conversation. But since I have the microphone, we have agreed that we'll try to get a full complement of all of the books that have been written about the region. So although the CBT is not in the, they don't want to have a bunch of stuff dumped on them. I had a talk about this with the Clayoquot Writers Group last night, of which I'm a part as well. If people are downsizing and they're really looking at this book and not a book or a shelf of books and not knowing what to do with them at this moment, I would love to chat with them, because if it means me holding on to some books until the new center is built, then I will do that. If they can hold on to them a bit longer, that would be great. But definitely if there's any decisions being made about downsizing your bookshelf, which I totally understand is a very traumatic thing. I'd love to have a chat with people.
I'm also like those people, using my books as furniture pieces to hold up various things like lamps. It's a real trouble, but don't just show up at our greenhouse in Tofino. Call or email, or how should people reach you?
Sure. You can just toughcitywriter@gmail.com.
Toughcitywriter@gmail.com. And you live...
I spell tough the correct way. TOUGH.
Is that the correct way though?
I don't know.
I've literally typed in TUFF multiple times when I'm trying to write to Adrian. Yeah, it doesn't work.
Okay. TOUGH. She lives in Tofino, everyone, not in Victoria. And she is back and has been back for a while. She'll take your books if you have no room for them. Thank you both for coming on. Really appreciate it. I love this project. I was so excited when I saw the questions today. I'm going to leave you with the lighthouse, everyone, by the waves. Thank you for listening to this month's segment of What is Brewing in the Biosphere.